Pika, pika. Well, hello everyone. This is Frenchie, and you are watching Geeking Out, where we geek out about anything. I mean, anything at all. If you have a passion and you can talk about it for hours, you're on the right show. So, that being said, today, look at my background. Guess what we're talking about? We are talking about Pokemon. And with us is Benver's own uh, Pokemon professor, I should call him, Mr. 50 Shades of Geek.
That's
All
high
right.
praise.
How are you, my man?
Good, good. Everything except my voice, which slightly cracks every once in a while, and you might hear me cough because I'm still getting rid of a cold that I had a week or so ago. So apologies in advance.
What I do suggest you, my friend, is to go see a Pokemon Center.
Yeah, but the Pokemon centers are for Pokemon. What am I gonna do in there?
You're not a Pokemon.
I don't think so.
The-
I think maybe I should just eat. I should just drink a hot beverage with some petal leaves in it, and maybe it'll be fine.
Amen on that. That being said, look at your background. I think we're talking to the right person. There's a whole bunch of Pokemon around you. I see Charizard. I see Snorlax. I see Pikachu. So I can't wait. Jesus. I can't wait to start talking about it. But look, Pokemon is a very broad subject, right? We could talk about any aspect. Today, I've chosen to talk about two Pokemon games because without the games, you don't have Pokemon, right? Yeah, you have the series, you have the movies, but it all starts with the games itself. Now, we could have went different directions. I'm Mr. 50, but we decided to go in two different aspects. One, a newer Pokemon game, but still holds true to the old Pokemon game, and a variation of a Pokemon game, which on paper should be completely boring, like absolutely
On
boring
paper,
on paper, and yet it is so freaking addictive. We're gonna start with yours, my man. So let me bring this up. If you do not know by now what this is, because I'm an idiot, I took it off. There you go. We are talking about, first off, Pokemon Snap. All right, so 50. Before we go into the details, why Pokemon Snap and why the one on Switch?
well, because like you said, it's very addictive, and because you already chose a main series game, a mainline Pokemon game. If you know anything about the Pokemon main series games, is basically it's all pretty much the same format. It's just a different region, a different story, different characters, different Pokemon, but the basic mechanics pretty much stay the same, right? And since you already chose yours, I thought we'd do something on the lesser talked about spectrum of Pokemon, which is one of the spin-offs that I do believe is also partially developed by Game Freak, but it is also developed by a different studio, and it's also a sequel to a video game from the mid 90s. New Pokemon Snap. That's what it's called. Because some people have called me out on it on Twitch when I accidentally put the old Pokemon Snap on my Twitch thing instead of the new Pokemon Snap. So yeah, apologize for that, but yeah, never making that mistake ever again. So new Pokemon Snap. I mean, you can see it right here. First of all, visually it looks stunning. I mean, look at that tree, man. That tree looks amazing. That's a great tree, and that's what people in the Pokemon fan community care about, right? How the trees look, the rendering of the trees.
For,
Is
for
this
those who for those who don't know, he's talking about the underbelly of the Pokemon fans that complain about trees in every game. So
Yeah. So I think this. I think I harped on this joke long enough. I mean, I think the main now, full disclosure, I was not super excited for this game when it was announced. Okay, but if you watch some old trailer reactions I did for my channel, before I saw the trailer, I was like, why bother? I mean, it's a stupid concept. Why would you even make a game about this, a new game about this? And as soon as I saw the trailers, I was blown away by what this game can offer. And in a way, it sort of speaks to why we love these creatures in the first place. They're like real world animals. We love animals, at least I do. And you get to see these Pokemon in their natural habitat, interacting with each other and with the environment the way natural Pokemon would in this situation. And it really does feel like a National Geographic thing,
It
like a nature documentary in a
it
way.
really does.
Yeah, especially with some of the environments you get to go on. And first of all, the idea in this game of the Neo One, that is one of those, when they make these Watch Mojo lists of top 10 technologies wish were real in the real world. This is a technology from a video game I wish was real. Like, it's a multi-platform, multi-terrain traveling machine that lets you go anywhere without being attacked by wild animals or affected by the harshness of the environment. As we look at this annoying ad in the middle, that it literally goes anywhere. It goes underwater. It goes into a active volcano in the snowy fields during the day and night. And the wild Pokemon, dangerous though they are, they just don't attack it. They just look at you and they run away. And it's a great way to view the world of Pokemon through the eyes of these magical creatures that we love so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost more like I said, discovery. It's almost more like a learning experience. It's a type of game like I don't have it on Switch, but I do plan to buy it because my daughter's starting to play games. She's 3, right? So her coordination is forget about it. But we actually play Pokemon together because the only thing she needs to do is press on a button when I tell her to, right? But she doesn't really understand what's going on. This is a whole different story because you don't need that much coordination. You just need to know how to aim and press a button, right? So that being said, that for me is something my kid would absolutely love, but something I would enjoy playing and watching her play too. And she's starting to get a sorry, my cat is
The
hungry.
cat wants to play too.
Yeah, no. But no, like my daughter started to love the Pokemon too. Like she knows who Pikachu is. She knows who Snorlax is. She even imitates the sound. So it's something that is good for everyone. Whereas the other game, it's fun to look at, but again, my daughter's not going to understand the farming system, and she's too young, right? But it's a good way to underline a love for Pokemon for those maybe who are too young to play it, and really assure that you get a audience 20 years from now and have like a eventually celebrate Pokemon for 50 years.
Yeah, and I mean, it is in a way something we all do all day anyway. We're all literally walking around with our phones, documenting our lives, taking pictures, taking videos. That's what this game is about. It's just you're taking pictures of Pokemon. What
Yeah.
could be better than that?
Well, I'm sure we can figure something out can be better than that. That
Well,
being
I mean, I mean, I wasn't being literal about. Come on.
said, I know, but when I can pick on you 50, I love it. All right.
And
So
you do that, and you do that every chance you get.
yeah, pretty much. Um, that being said, okay, so now we know why you took Pokemon Snap. Let's understand a bit your love for Pokemon Snap and maybe certain levels or some things, or if you want to talk about this first level coming up, if you are familiar enough to talk about it, go ahead, my man.
Yeah. So the thing is, in the Neo One, you've got several different features you can do. I mean, the route itself, as you'll see, is automatic. Like, you can't necessarily change that; it always goes in the same direction. But you have all kinds of different features. I don't think you have them this early in the game yet, but you can obviously take a picture because that's the main point of the game. But you also have you can throw these little fluff fruits, which they're essentially apples, but they call them fluff fruits in the game. So you can throw these apples at them, and if you, depending on how you do it, it changes the way the Pokemon themselves interact with the environment around them. You either startle them because you normally what I do is you hit them on the head and they're like, oh, oh, bah! Or they find this tasty, delicious apple, and they run around and eat it. And there are all kinds of different ways different Pokemon eat it. Some just eat it off the ground, some grab it and throw it into their jaws. Some, the fire types, for example, they burn it and then start to chew it on while it's crispy. Some of them, if they are asleep, you throw the fluff food on them. They wake up, and then they do something that they normally wouldn't do if you didn't do that. There's also a scanning mechanic, which allows you to analyze different parts of the map, as well as the Pokemon have a certain interaction with the sound of the scanning mechanic. Like, for example, in one of the maps, I don't know if you can find it here, but in one of the maps, there's like a trio of Metapods that if you hit the snap option, they all just use Harden all at once, and they just sort of have this explosion effect. That's really nice, and it's a really great picture to take. There's also later in the game, there's this Illumina orb with these Illumina flowers. You throw these orbs at the flowers, and they sort of illuminate and they color the Pokemon in a special light. That also the Pokemon then interact with the flower, and in some ways that's the only way that you can take snapshots of certain Pokemon. They only appear if you light up the flower, and they show and they come up to admire the flower. And in one case with Scorbunny, Scorbunny is a Pokemon that has these fire making things that on his feet, that there's always fire that blows every time he starts walking or kicking. If you hit the Humana flower next to him, his fire turns from the regular yellowish orange to blue flames, which is really cool. So there are so many different ways you can play music to the Pokemon. You can manipulate the environment to get better in different shots. You see, there's like 2 to 4 star shots.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, to be able, like, what is categories? How do you get better star shots? Because that person only got 1, right? So the rest were 1 stars. One of the photos were 2 stars. How do you get better stars?
Well, the stars is basically just the pose. Like 1 star is like the Pokemon sleeping, standing, or sitting. 2 stars and up is like the Pokemon actually doing something unique. Like there is in one of the maps, there's like a beachfront where you're literally going on the sea floor with a few tiny islands in the middle, and there's a Machamp standing on one of the tiny islands, flexing and doing workouts. And in one case of the map, he just literally jumps into the waters and starts swimming, and he has the race with a Sharpedo. That's another different star. Like every different pose or different interaction or different behavior is a different star. And obviously, as you can see, you get points for which pose you get. If the Pokemon is looking at the camera, how big they are in the frame, how much in the center they are.
And you see, it's interesting. If you look like pose, size, direction, placement, or a Pokemon, so it's not just the activities. There's also like the placement itself and the size. Like, what do you mean size? Meaning how zoomed in you are, or the actual Pokemon if it's a bigger one?
Yeah, like if, for example, this Bidoof is a small Pokemon, so he gets average size points. But if he was zoomed in like this Wurmple here, which is a lot closer to the lens itself, he's going to get some more points.
Yeah, I see that the size is higher. Okay, interesting. What
size is the most important because it's got 2,000 points. It's the most points you can get out of these.
So basically, it's framing. Size is framing, technically.
Pretty much, yeah. Like
okay. Direction.
The Pokemon is in the center, and you get extra points for how big they are in the frame.
Direction is what then?
Like this is perfect. If the Pokemon is looking at the camera.
Okay. Yeah, I see that direction. So what's the difference between direction and placement, though? That I don't get.
If they're at the direct center of the frame, of the picture.
Like this is not in the center, so it's gonna have a lower score. Okay.
Yeah, but you can see because of the size, it got this SLB is getting all the diamond stars right off the bat. Like what the hell? See, this is gonna get low direction because it's asleep and it's not looking at the camera.
Yeah, okay, you're right.
But it is placed relatively in the center of the frame, so we got high placement.
Interesting. It's a bad photo.
Yeah, but it is placed in the center, so at least he's going to get points for placement. See? Okay. That's what placement means.
The size is completely off.
It's too far away. Yeah,
Interesting.
and uh, once you there's in addition to the Pokedex, there's also a photo dex, as you see here, and like I said, every Pokemon has four types of pictures you can take: 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars, 4 stars. If you get I think it's 3 stars, you need one picture, one big star picture to put the Pokemon in your Pokedex. You need three pictures of three different stars to get the Pokedex description of it, like you do in other games. So like it's kind of the equivalent of seeing the Pokemon as opposed to catching it in other games. And obviously you get extra points for filling out the Pokedex with all four pictures.
So let's advance around and I say a 1 hour gameplay here. Let's see. Let's have a bit of your commentary. Let's have a commentary on how annoying YouTube ads are.
Yeah, and let's have commentary on how annoying YouTube ads are about how annoying the YouTube ads are. You ever get these every once in a while?
Yeah. All right. So, Park Night.
Yeah, it's the same location, and at night there's different Pokemon in different times of the day, just like in the main series games. And also, certain Pokemon who are more active during the day are less active at night, and vice versa. Like the Hoot Hoot that was in the tree earlier was sleeping. You should be wide awake right now. There's the score bunny. So you see the
Yeah.
kick that he just did with the flames. If you get an Illumina flower next to him, those kicks become blue flames.
Like he's throwing apples randomly, but you don't seem to really care.
I mean, you either throw it at the Pokemon to get a reaction, like throwing it at their face, or just what happened with this Pidgeot here, like you throw it next to him and he sees it and he goes around to eat it. But for with these Bufalons, he's trying to throw it at their heads to try and wake them up. And you can sometimes do like this Tangrowth,
Ah,
where
Tangrowth, nice.
and some of these
Like,
Pokemon get very irritated if you wake them up, but they still won't attack you. They just run away.
okay, and now let's. I want to see a predictive to see if you think this is a good high score photos or not. So let's look at a couple ones like this. Do you think it's a good one?
Uh, yeah, I mean it's relatively big. It's looking at directly at the camera. It's doing something.
So how many stars do you think? We're gonna look at a Caterpie one.
I mean, I don't know how many stars because it's sometimes next to impossible to figure out which pose equals which number of stars. But I'd say it would get some high points. There's the flower that I mentioned earlier, and like every different island in this archipelago has different colored flowers, and also every island in this archipelago has what's called an Illumina spot, where you can find an Illumina Pokemon, which is literally a Pokemon that when you throw the Illumina orb at it, it starts to light up with these beautiful patterns, almost like a tattoo printed on their skin. And you get extra points for taking pictures of those. And obviously, if you get really further advanced into the game, and sometimes these interactions that you're seeing right here trigger other things later in the map. Like if you feed a Pidgeot at the beginning, you get a certain Pokemon towards the end. If you feed a Pidgeot like now in the middle, you get a different special Pokemon at a different point, or a Pokemon doing something differently. Like it sometimes all depends on what you do on the course that determines what happens later on the course. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes. I did not know that factor.
Yeah, there's like in the morning of this route here, you can if you either throw the fluff fruit or the apple at that Magikarp, it bounces out of the water, and then a Pidgeot comes and grabs it and flies away. So the you interact with certain Pokemon that they trigger certain behaviors from other Pokemon as well. Like there's in this route specifically at night, you can find a pincer like now like this one and a Heracross, and if you do certain things all throughout the map, you could get a scenario where they fight each other, and that's also worth a big stars for both of them. And recently, they've also added a sort of DLC free DLC where in this suit specifically, there's an area where you shrink down the size, and you can actually see some of the smaller Pokemon in like a outcove. See, because he fed the PGL twice, he shows up again and he does this motion, which I'm assuming is the 4-star pose. I don't know the exact what each pose means, which number of stars, but you get my meaning here, right?
Yeah. Like it unlocks other possibilities, you know.
Yeah,
And that's what creates this game not to be too boring, just like passing through and click and like you play it once, you play it all the time. Because
yeah.
for some people, I'm sure, but the fact that you can unlock certain things makes it replayable. Is that correct?
Yeah, almost every time you play through the same route, you can get different reactions and different Pokemon showing up. And if you really play your cards right, you can actually find legendary Pokemon every once in a while.
Interesting.
And
And
of
how do
course,
you play the legendary?
I wish I knew because I only caught the legendaries that are part of the main story. But like you do certain interactions, you obviously you get scores. You saw earlier, you get scores for each uh, route that you take, and all these scores are getting accumulated. If you like to skip ahead to the actual scoring bit, uh, all these different scores you get eventually get accumulated, and if you have enough scores, you can advance this route specifically to rank number 2 or rank number 3. And each one of the different ranks has different Pokemon, sometimes more Pokemon, and sometimes the same Pokemon doing different behaviors. Like in I mentioned earlier, in the on the seabed side, you get the Machamp just standing on a rock, working out. Rank 2, he interacts with some of the other Pokemon in the area. Rank 3 is when he jumps into the water and starts swimming. So like every rank has different reactions to different Pokemon. There's like one rank where you see glimpses of a for alligator. You advance it to rank 2. He literally starts swimming next to you and stops to look at you and lets you take a picture. So like
Interesting.
various different things you can do with each route. Obviously, there's like right now we're only seeing the same route. We saw it a couple of times. There's a more meadowish place. There's a place on the river. There's a route that literally takes you through a misty forest. That almost every time you cross that same route, you get a different location of that same forest. Like it's kind of weird, Are you familiar with the Pokemon Sawsbuck? It's the
By name.
yeah, it's the deer that changes its appearance and
Yes, 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 yes,
look
yes.
depending on the season.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
in that forest, you can find all four different forms of Sawsbuck, depending on how you play the route. Like it can take you to a misty forested area where you see the summer form. It can take you to a colder version of that same place where you see the winters form. Like that's one of the more versatile routes in the game where this son of a bitch keeps getting all the diamond stars in every single picture. Like what the hell? But yeah, you can find different types of Pokemon in the same route.
And how do you get that diamond, by the way?
The most amount of scores, like I think anything below 2000 is bronze. Anything between 2000 and 2500 is silver. Above 2500 is gold, and above 4000 is diamond. I think.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact number specifically, but here, there it is. See, level 2. If he gets enough points, he can get it to level 3, and then you can go through the same route with more Pokemon in it doing different things. And you get these rewards for the type of things that you capture.
So let's go into almost the end of the game. I want to have your commentary here because it's gonna be a different route, most probably.
I mean, near the end, it would most probably be the close to the end where you find the main legendary to find, which is Xerneas.
Okay. Let's skip this shit.
Skip the skip. Oh, and here's another fun aesthetic thing. Like you see every new Pokemon you add, their silhouette appears in the loading screens.
Oh, nice.
Like it only shows you the Pokemon that you already caught. And every once in a while, these guys come in and have some dialogue to give some semblance of a story.
Yeah, that because there's not much to do in this game except for taking photos. For me, it's just filler to make the game more than 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean there is a story in there somewhere. Like you learned that 1,000 years ago a meteor came and some Pokemon, specifically the Illumina Pokemon, showed up and fought the creature that came from the meteor and saved the region. That's why they're
But
special or whatever.
let's just say if they didn't put a story, it wouldn't be that much of a difference. Like there's certain games you play for a story. This one is not one you play for a story.
Yeah, it's the one you play to find more new routes, like this one right here. Oh, I think this is an Illumina spot.
Yeah,
Yep, it
that's
is.
what
It
we
is
can.
the Illumina Steelix. Now you're gonna. This is one of the harder ones because he jumps from different holes in the wall, and you have to throw the Illumina orb at him to get him to show the glowing pattern, and then take a picture.
Because so it's only about the Onyx. There's no other Pokemons in this one.
Because you're going through this route for the first time, yes, you. But obviously, once you get a picture taken of this guy, you get some points. You get to level 2, and then there's some new Pokemon added to this route in addition to the Steelix. There it is. Oh, nope, no, there it is. Yeah, you throw the apple, and there he is.
Interesting.
You have to be really quick on the draw here with this guy. There's the pattern. You see it?
Okay. And you have a limited orb.
You have unlimited orbs and apples. The only thing you're limited is the number of pictures you can take. You can only take up to 72 pictures per route.
Okay.
If you run out, you immediately get teleported back. You don't even get to finish the route.
Oh damn. Okay.
Man, this guy's like a pro. You can tell it's not his first time.
No, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, it took me it took me ages to figure out what I was doing and how you can get the patterns to show up. This is good. Now, obviously, you take as many pictures as you can, and by the end, you choose the one you think is the best, the one that would
That
get
one.
you the most points, and that's the one you put in the photo decks.
What he's doing.
He's trying to hit the flower to get the Steelix to show up. There's also a level that takes place underwater, and in the underwater, it's got like underwater mechanics, like the apple doesn't fly as good. Like it's
It's
like
slow.
not like you throw an apple; it's like slower. Or alternatively, if the Illumina orb floats upwards because the waters, there's a little the gravity is different there. Or
All right.
and then
So
also,
I have to blow my nose. So continue on the commentary of what you see in the games. I'll be right back in like 30 seconds.
okay, cool. And also, one thing that I want to point out is that there are instances in some of the routes, not all of them, but if you scan a certain location, you can actually change the route. Or like there's like a cave, you scan that area and you have an option of do you continue the regular route or do you take the alternate route, which potentially has different Pokemon or different behaviors or poses for you to snap. And then there's like in the underwater level, you could go the regular underwater route, or you can go down, down, down to the depths and see like the really Pokemon that live in the dark areas underwater.
Interesting.
That's why I think that the Neo one is that's a great vehicle because it can pretty much go anywhere without harming the occupant. I think if this thing was real, we could use it in the real world and learn more about our own world the same way that these characters learn about the Pokemon world. It's great.
Very interesting. All right, so I say we end it here for Pokemon Snap. But yeah, it's I mean like this is wanting me to buy it. Like I know I'll have fun because again, on paper it should be boring, but all that little interactivities, the routes you can take, and also like the honest one, it's not just snapping photos. You do have to understand the logic. There is a game behind the structure of it, and I do like that. And again, it's something I know I'm going to bond with my daughter with, so I'm definitely going to go ahead and try it out. Probably the only Pokemon game I do not have on the Switch right now, which again pisses me off because for every generation of console, I usually get everything Pokemon. I've been playing Pokemon since Red and Blue, man. So I'm if Pokemon exists for another 50 years, I'll be 70 and playing Pokemon.
There's nothing wrong with that. Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Exactly. So on to the next one, which would be my choice. Let me just go ahead and share that screen for you. We are gonna talk about good old Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yeah, triple the length of the one that we just watched from mine.
Yes. And let me just start out the fact that you know having this new generation of Pokemon for me is really refreshing because I love the old Pokemon. But after a while, even with Sun and Moon and XY and Black and White, they all, like you said before, feel the same in a sense. Like even you said all different stories. Sometimes the stories ain't that different. You're always that kid that wakes up and mom talks to you, and then you have to set out an adventure, and something happens in the lab.
Yeah.
And then you have to beat your rival or blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
it's always you got to fight the 8 gyms, you got to fight the rival, you got to become the champion, and you got to single handedly bring down the local mafia. And you're a child.
Exactly. That being said, there is a lot of those tropes in this one, but the way it starts, I find very refreshing. The fact that like you are friends with the main champion, and or you're with the brother of the main champion, and instead of like going out of this world and happens you do gyms here and there, your main goal is gyms, but it's because you're part of this league, the sport, and you have to go through the gyms and you're being televised and there's people watching you in stadiums. It adds this different tone to it that for me makes it refreshing, better graphics, awesome mechanics, made for me compared to Violet and Arceus. I tried a bit, like as an overhaul, like refreshing field of Pokemon. It's probably the best in my opinion so far on the Switch. And also I like the fact that you can skip if you are a good player, you've been playing for years, you can skip the tutorials, which is something you couldn't do before. And as well is the not open world because that's Violet, but the more you can see the Pokemon on the goddamn field and not just random encounters. And you hope, if you have a water type or like a fire type Pokemon like Raboot here, to avoid water types, so you go around and you train the ones that you want to train with Raboot, and then you switch in and you aim for it changes the how you farm, which is a huge part of Pokemon, is the farming aspect. And for me, really made farming a lot more enjoyable and a lot less annoying, because when you get like 4 times in a row water types when you're supposed to get bug types, and you just hope and cross your fingers you don't get another freaking water type, the farming gets annoying at one point.
Yeah, that I think is probably the best feature that they added, which they also continued it to Scarlet and Violet, is that you choose which Pokemon you want to fight. The Pokemon doesn't leap out of the grass at you. Sometimes you get these rustling grass patches, and there's still that little bit of mystery of you don't know which Pokemon you're getting, which could be pretty annoying when you're trying to complete the Pokedex, and there are some Pokemon you can only ever find in the grass, they're not in the wild. But like you said, you see them running around, you choose whether you want to fight them or not. And that I think is the best way to play Pokemon games. which they also continued to Legends Arceus in between Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet.
Well, yeah, like, that's what I was gonna say. The main difference between I find Sword and Shield when it comes to the Pokemon being out there compared to Violet and the Violet and Scarlet is you can usually mostly find them in the grass area, except if it's a really strong Pokemon, which they do put, which is fun to really test to see if your Pokemons can beat higher level Pokemons. But they're usually in the fields, whereas Violet, it's a lot more scattered and a lot more not just in one area. You have them on routes, you have them walking around in other places, so they have a bit more of a real life feel to it. But I also find that a bit more annoying in my part. Like I like having knowing certain areas is going to be where I'm farming, and sometimes I just want to get the period A to period B, and I keep getting fights, because I can't aim properly. I don't see well. So I think I'm avoiding them and I'm freaking touching them every time. So I do prefer the way they laid out the Pokemon on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I agree because in Scarlet and Violet they're everywhere. They infiltrate cities and they reach certain populated areas, and it could get very annoying, especially when they have these groups and they just follow you around. Here, that they created a great gaming mechanic, which is the wild area. So when you're on routes, you find Pokemon around the grass patches. They don't enter the cities, and when you're in the wild areas, they can be anywhere because that's what it is. It is a wild area, and obviously they expanded it in the Isle of Armor and in the Crown Tundra, where it almost feels like I think the Crown Tundra they nailed it, where there is a small town in the Crown Tundra where the Pokemon don't go there, but you leave the borders of the town, and you can basically find Pokemon everywhere you go.
Yeah,
That's something that I wish they did in Scarlet
Violet.
Violet because it gets really annoying where you try to get from one place to the other, and the Pokemon just follow you around. Some of them are faster than you, and they just dash towards you,
Oh yeah,
and you're forced into a fight sometimes. And
yeah.
sometimes you're not really in the mood for fights. One thing that does help the Scarlet and Violet is that Pokemon centers are much more abundant, and you can literally they don't you don't have to walk into a building anymore and talk to the thing. You just go in, get out without having to interact too much with the Pokemon Center. And the one thing that I think Scarlet and Violet did better, which I wish they did in this game, but they didn't for some reason, is that you can see shiny Pokemon on the map. And
Yeah.
here, you have to walk up to them and hope you get one. I did get lucky with Sword and Shield on a couple of them, but in the same time, like I was grinding, I was trying to get from one place to the other, and just randomly encountered a shiny in the wild, and that was wild to me. And I couldn't believe my luck because it was a Voltorb, the Pokemon that explodes when you try to catch it. So I got incredibly lucky on that one that I actually managed to catch it. So yeah, seeing wild shinies is something they introduced in the previous game. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and they also have this shine around them because some shiny Pokemon don't look that different, so you need the sparkly effect to know which Pokemon is shiny. I wish they did that with Scarlet and Violet, but at least you can see them again in the wild, which is great. And
Now,
they also did that in Legends Arceus. Sorry.
one thing, let's talk about the Dynamax aspect because that's something I never liked with the Pokemon franchise is the Dynamax. It becomes old fast, I find, and the fact that the attack moves go with basically just a type and they always repeat. The animation becomes very dull at one point.
They're very repetitive, and you can't skip the animation.
Yeah, and I wish I prefer Scarlet and Violet for that because the crystallized thing, you still keep the animations, your moves, and everything. You know what you're selecting as well, and I just find the aesthetics a bit cooler in my opinion when it comes to the special attacks, like the in Scarlet and Violet, it's like crystals you go underground, and this like it's an energy signal. But I prefer that part of the game in Scarlet compared to Sword and Shield. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. Like the Dynamaxing thing was very cool the first couple of times you try it, but the more I mean, it's a pretty big mechanic. So you're naturally going to do that a lot. And the more you do it, the more it gets boring, and the more these Dynamax battles start to drag. If you catch
Yeah,
my meaning, like the in the Crown Tundra where you have the thing where you can catch legendaries. I did catch one shiny legendary, not for lack of trying, but I mean I've played like hundreds of these, and the worst part about it is they're incredibly slow because of the Dynamaxing thing, and you can't skip the animations. I've seen it 100 different times, and just the Dynamax. And you can't skip the animations. You have this feature, but the rest of it, the making the Pokemon bigger and the shrinking, and that you can't skip. So it just makes the whole battle that much slower. And yeah, this is a really cool animation, and it is slightly closer to what the original idea of Pokemon was meant to be. I don't know if you knew this, but
no.
the developers based Pokemon on what's his face? I think Ultraman. There's this
Mhm.
Japanese Super Sentai guy that
Okay.
literally fights giant kaiju's and captures them in little capsules that he keeps on his belt. And every once in a while, he sends them out into a battle, and they grow the giant size again to help him. Sort of inspired the Power Rangers as well. But that's basically what Pokemon is, and Dynamaxing is the ultimate realization of it. With the giant kaiju like Pokemon, just they went a little too far with it. Like this animation again, you can't skip it. You got to watch this giant Pokeball shake 3 times, and it just makes the whole gaming experience that much slower, which I
Yeah.
appreciate with it in Scarlet and Violet with the terrestrialized feature. It's a lot shorter. There's still the annoying animation every once in a while, but it's a lot shorter and much more manageable.
And the thing is, like for me, like if we're going to difficulty level now for the game, for me, this game is a lot easier than a lot of other games. Like I it's because I play it so often. I know how to farm and I know how to cycle my Pokemon to make sure that like not one's at level 35 and the rest are at 20, They all usually are always in the same level. So if I got one at 35, most of them is going to be at 35 as well because I do the rotations. I'm not one of those that will collect 300 Pokemons to use five. I usually just collect the Pokemons I know I'm going to use. And I usually do, like, for the first half of the game and a bit more, I usually have two sets of teams. So I usually have around you know 10 to 12 Pokemon that I know has different strengths so I can play around, and later in the game I usually have a third set of a team, right, so I can play around with. But that's usually what I get. I don't get more than that. Sometimes by curiosity I get one, I'm like, I don't like this Pokemon, so I'll release it. But I never max out my boxes. But that really helps me with the game, especially the old ones that you did not have the evolution of other Pokemons when you fight one Pokemon. Usually the old ones, well, depending on which old ones, but most of the old ones, you only get points for the Pokemon you fight with. So it really helped the mechanism of farming, because if not, the game is long as hell. Whereas now the newer generations and like a couple of the older generations, they have ways for you to evolve more than one at a time. Which when my method makes it too easy at one point because I go to gyms and I'm always like 4 levels, 5 levels over the gyms. And that is one thing. I wish there would be a harder difficulty level version of the game. Either if I can have to buy it, if you have like Violet, Scarlet, and Extreme, whatever you want to call it, I would take the harder version because I'm breezing through all the newer generation Pokemons like this.
Yeah, and here's how I do it. Now, this isn't necessarily how I think everyone should do it. It's just how I choose to play the game is I am that guy that catches every single new Pokemon I see, hardly use some of them, but I mainly catch them for the Pokedex so I can complete the Pokedex and get the shiny charm and catch shiny Pokemon. But for the most part, I catch Pokemon and I don't necessarily catch the evolved forms. I catch them at their lowest level so that I can evolve them and watch them grow. And I do, out of say 300 or 400 Pokemon that I normally catch per game, I end up using about 200 of them, 200 to 50,
Damn.
because I do rotations, because of the new mechanic of the EXP share active all the time. I always change up my team. I have pretty much a different team for every gym, and I try my best to use every single member of my team in said gym, so that none of the Pokemon feel left out, and I get much more attached to these Pokemon that way. Like I get certain Pokemon that I get really attached to because I use them for specific battles and because they help me get over specific hurdles, and I do form a bond with these Pokemon. That's really is what Pokemon is all about. The bond you get with these Pokemon.
It's funny you say that because too, like the philosophy of Pokemon is in all of us who play, right? Because I get attached too, and I get attached in a different way. Since I've watched a lot of the series, I almost started this the system of like 2 to 3 teams per game and cycling in because of the show. Because the show you don't see 200 Ash doesn't own 200 Pokemons. He has a small team, and that team evolves over that season. So you get a couple of teams. And also, I always play it like, what if I be watching my team in the TV show? And I kind of get attached because of that.
Yeah, but for me, I have different members that I get attached to in different ways, and I mix and match. Like I don't always have the same members on the same team. I have like members like all fire types. I mix them in with a team of all water types. I mix them in with all electric type. I try to have as diverse of a team as possible, and again, change the team every time. And the more you do that, the harder the game is going to be to you because you're not using the same Pokemon and they keep leveling up and up and up and up and up and up. So you're several levels above the gym leader. You always when you do these rotations as often as I do, it is challenging. So there have been games in the newer games where I did suffer through and barely won by the skin of my teeth. If you catch my meaning. So thanks to doing all these rotations, I keep taking all the high level Pokemon and putting them in the box, and then bringing in the lower level Pokemon to do some more grinding. That's where the grinding mechanic really helps,
Hmm.
and the lower levels really help make it more of a challenge for me as a player. So that again, I'm not saying that every Pokemon player should do the same thing. I'm just saying if you want a challenge, that's something that you should consider at least.
Interesting. Yeah, I might because at one point, since I say black and white, I've mastered the game.
Yeah, and Black and White were, shall we say, tougher than some of the new, one of the tougher games game
Yeah,
wise.
I had no choice but to learn the game because I just couldn't play at one point because it was getting too hard. My favorite, well, I freaking hate this challenge. It's so annoying. Um,
Yeah.
one of my favorite though Pokemon of all time is Gold, but the remake version, Heart Gold.
Mm, yeah, it's one of the best remakes.
Yeah,
I don't know if you played the newer remakes, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl.
I
And
have the Diamond on Switch. I haven't played it yet.
yeah, I mean, they did not do a good job remaking them. It's literally the exact same games with the flaws of the because Diamond and Pearl when they came out weren't the best games. That's why Platinum had to come out, and it is the definitive Sinnoh game version of it. And they kept all the flaws from the original Diamond and Pearl without any of the improvements from Platinum. So that's
So
why
it's just a graphic update. That's about it. They didn't add anything to the game.
the main thing they added was the Grand Underground. Like they took the underground and made it much more immersive with these hidden grottos. If you can find certain Pokemon with hidden abilities in there, Pokemon you wouldn't be able to find and catch otherwise. And obviously, the other big main change is they made the Elite Four and the Champion practically unbeatable. Like they updated their levels, their move sets. They gave them all. Every Pokemon has a held item specifically tailor made for that Pokemon to make it harder for you. And it's like it's one of the hardest Elite Four champions in any Pokemon game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because the rest of the game, for the most part, is a cakewalk until you get to the Elite Four and get your ass kicked several times over.
All right. So that being said, 50, again, I do thank you to be on the show. I say I'm all Pokemon out right now. But it is always fun to geek out with you, my friend. So before we end, where can people find you?
You can find me on my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek. I do weekly reviews of every single Doctor Who episode from 1963 all the way up to 2022, as well as a few other random things whenever I have time to. I did a couple of Eurovision stuff recently. I did a couple of movie reviews from the theaters. And I can also be found on the Northern Entertainment Group YouTube channel every Monday on the greatest show in the galaxy, talking more Doctor Who, and every Thursday on Fun with Flags, when me and my friend Soda teach each other a little something we didn't know about our individual countries, Canada and Israel. So check that out as well.
All right, and you can find me a bit everywhere in Benverse. That being said, mostly right now on Multiverse of Geekdom on this show, also doing trailer reactions and whenever I can help the boys with their own shows. So thank you very much for watching. Till next time, pika pika.
Gotta catch them all.